Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So out of the two breweries involved in this one, it's actually only the away brewery that is featured on the channel before. The home brewery is one that is a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves, and they're a brewery that have been on my radar for quite some time, so it's quite nice to finally be able to review one of their beers for you here on the channel. The away brewery, on the other hand, is one that is featured on the channel many times before. These guys are a very well-rounded brewery in my experience. They do lots of different things and they always tend to do it pretty damn well, actually. Definitely one of the most recognisable old head names of the Japanese craft beer scene. So this should be a really interesting collaboration. But the beer that we're going to look at today is one of the home brewery's latest releases. It's a style that we know very well, a very popular style of beer at the moment, and it's one that I do quite enjoy as well, actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, for the home side of things, we are going to head up to the Japanese capital, Tokyo, and we're going to go to the Toshima area, and that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Inkhorn Brewing. So this particular beer is called Niwa no Tori, which translates into English as garden bird. Tori is bird, Niwa is garden. But this beer comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and this one is brewed in collaboration with the wonderful Ise Kadoya of Ise Mie Prefecture, a little bit further south here in the Kansai region. So yeah, this is the very first time I'm trying a beer from Inkhorn, but like I said, these guys have a very good reputation and they're a brewery that have been on my radar for quite some time. So this is another one that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Maichi here in Osaka. So if you do find yourself in Osaka, that shop is a little bit of a must visit. It's run by Koji and his daughter Rika, who's doing most of the work these days because Koji is a little bit older. But you'll find their Facebook page in the video description below, and they supply, you know, pretty much all of the Japanese beer that I review for you here on the channel. So do go give them a like and go and visit there if you find yourself in Osaka. But yeah, always nice to return to Ise Kadoya as well, and definitely excited to try my first Inkhorn Brewing beer. So let's crack on then and see what this one has in store for us. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about both the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. You'll find all the usual links in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ise Kadoya, and my future reviews that I'll do from Inkhorn Brewing. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. Do consider subscribing, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beers using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Inkhorn Brewing first, since they're the home brewery, and then Ise Kadoya. So Inkhorn Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Tokyo, and to be precise, they are from the Toshima area. But the main man behind the company is Shun Nakade, who is originally from Koto Ward in Tokyo, and he founded the company along with his wife Amy Holdsworth, who is originally from Connecticut in the northeastern US, New England. But apparently Shun's parents were very into fine food and drink, and this rubbed off on him somewhat. But he attended high school in Oregon in the western US, and then moved to Seattle to study music theory and psychology. And it was during this time that he discovered craft beer, although he says he didn't recognize it as such at the time. But when he returned to Japan a little bit later on, he simply wondered why there were no beers similar to the ones that he'd been drinking in the US. So soon after this, he started frequenting bars that were selling German and Belgian beers, and during the 2010s, he was working in administration and also as a translator at local international school, and he also worked a wee bit with interpretation as well, but he also started to dabble a little bit in home brewing. So later on in 2018, he became involved in the launch of a brew pub called Pitman's in the Koto area of Tokyo, and it was here that he had his first opportunity to brew commercially. And after a while, he was left to his own devices with the brewing, but he was also helping brew at Choshi Beer and also at Tsukuba Brewery as well. But by 2020, he had decided that he wanted to open his own project, and he started travelling around and collaborating with other brewers until he opened his own space in 2021. But the name Inkhorn that he chose for his project is a reference to the animal horn inkwells, basically the ink container. Then these were popular and popularly used by scholars in Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. And Shun said that he felt these were always a kind of a source of inspiration for him because ink transforms into words, and the scholars who used these were often debating including words from other languages. For example, in English they were debating about using Latin words and stuff like this, but he kind of used it that he's bringing brewing culture from elsewhere into Japan, so he thought this was a kind of nice representation. But the taproom space at the brewery has been designed by Amy, who has a passion for birds and avian conservation, and this is the inspiration for much of the brewery artwork and the names of several of the beers, which you can see quite clearly here, Garden Bird. But when they started, the brewery was equipped with two 5-barrel, roughly 600 litre, and two 10-barrel, roughly 1200 litre tanks, and the brewing has gradually just been scaled up over the years. But as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 110 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and from what I understand, they consistently produce IPAs, and this is something Shun, I believe, is more into like lagers and lighter drinkable beers, but Amy, his wife, really enjoys West Coast IPAs, so apparently he's produced some very, very good West Coast IPAs, so we'll need to see about checking those out at some point. But that is everything I can really tell you about Inkhorn Brewing for the moment. If you guys want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. And hopefully we can get up to Tokyo and do a little out and about video at Inkhorn Brewing's tap room. That would be pretty awesome. So yeah, lots of ideas for out and about videos in Japan over the next wee while. But yeah, as I say, check out the links to this brewery in the video description below. Let's go on to Ise Kadoya then. So Ise Kadoya, as I've told you many times before, are from Ise City in Mie Prefecture in the Kansai region of Japan, and this city is of course dubbed as the holy city of the Shinto religion, and it's home to over 200 Shinto shrines, but the most notable one is the Ise Grand Shrine. But the city apparently gets about 5 million visitors per year, but it's just a relatively small town of 130,000 people. So the brewery was founded back in 1997, and it's owned by Narihiro Suzuki, who had previously studied microbiology at Tohoku University, and he runs the company along with his wife Chika Suzuki, who does a lot of work in the company's restaurants. But the roots of the Suzuki family business go back to 1575, when his family founded the Kadoya Cafe with the aim of selling the Kinako Mochi tea to the Ise pilgrims, and Narihiro is apparently the 21st generation of his family to run this company. But the full company name is now Nikenjaya Mochi Kadoya Honten, and it's apparently one of the oldest continuously running companies in Japan. But in the early days of the brewery, the company struggled when the Jibiru boom kind of fell flat. Jibiru local beer came in 1993 when the government revised the alcohol production laws, so you could brew beer as long as you could produce 200,000 litres of beer per year, as opposed to 2 million as it was previously. And so a number of little breweries popped up brewing German beers, but they couldn't match the quality or the price of the German stuff itself, even when it was imported into Japan. So a number of them just kind of died. But what they did in this early stage was that Narihiro decided they were going to produce Shinto beers as a sort of souvenir, and it was this that kept the brewery the brewery side of the company going through the difficult times. And it was only in 2010 that the Ise Kadoya beers started to perform better than the Shinto souvenir beers. But the brewmaster at Ise Kadoya is Masakazu Nakanishi, who joined the company in 1997 after having worked an office job. He studied fermentation in high school during his agriculture classes, and the brewery apparently were looking for a brewer at the time when his other work contract finished. So it was really just a perfect fit, and he later became the brewmaster in 1999. But another instrumental man in the company is Yoshihiro Matsuoka, who is the restaurant manager and the label designer, and he's known as the walking beer dictionary because his knowledge is apparently just crazy. But the brewery import various hops and malts from across the world. They use water from the local Miyagawa River, which is filtered through charcoal microfilters, and they're apparently very thorough in their quality control, and they've won many awards for their beers to date. But the brewery have a number of restaurants, but the most notable one apparently is Biagura, which is the kind of original on-site restaurant, and they've also got the Ise Kadoya Kaikumaiten, which is the one that's really related to the very old side of the business. So that's the one that I definitely want to visit. They've got a core range of beers these days, various seasonal beers, and they also produce cider, soy sauce, tamari, miso paste, and the Kinako Mochi tea, of course. But in 2018, they opened up their new brewery, which has given them the capacity to brew 650,000 litres of beer per year, and more recently they've also created a core range of beer and started canning a number of their beers that go into supermarkets, and these are available across Japan, and you'll find these quite easily in the Aeon malls here. But as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 420 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, but they are still very experimental in their approach. Ise Kadoya are a very well-rounded brewery, and you'll always get pretty damn solid stuff from them in my experience. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Ise Kadoya. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and yeah, try some of their beers. That's the most important thing. But that brings us to the end of our history section of the video. Interesting to learn a little bit about Inkhorn Brewing, of course, and Ise Kadoya is a brewery that we know very well on the channel. But let's get on and focus on the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. You can see it is very nice, and of course I think it is Amy that produces these lovely pictures that go on the beer. You can see plain silver top on the can there, and it tells you a wee bit on the side of the can about the beer as well. It says, for our second collaboration with the Ise Kadoya beer, we brewed hazy double IPA at both locations featuring Nelson Sauvin, Motueka and from Clayton hops in New Zealand. Papaya, mango, nectarine, mint, grapefruit and lime flavours are all blended into a soft and juicy body. But you can see Inkhorn Brewing symbol on the side there, and also Ise Kadoya as well. But yeah, really nice looking beer, this one, I have to say that. Yeah, nicely presented. 350 millilitres, I think. 355 millilitres, which is actually an American measurement if I'm not mistaken. But 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one is hot with Nelson Sauvin, Motueka and Citra, from what I understand. These are hops that we all know quite well. Nelson Sauvin, New Zealand hop, 16% alpha acid, gives you this lovely kind of white, green, grapey sort of character. Motueka, a New Zealand hop that we know quite well as well, 8% alpha acid, gives you a very juicy, limey note. Citra, 14% alpha acid, American hop, and this beer has a malt base of wheat, extra pilsner and flaked oats. It's also got a little bit of maltose, cane sugar, lactose in it as well, and it uses a WLP 66 strain yeast. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. I will say that when you hold this can, it is quite dense actually. So yeah, I do quite like that about this. This is going to be quite nice. Let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I really am quite excited to try my first Inkhorn beer and see what it's all about. So here we are. It's always cool when you hear things about breweries and then you finally get to try some of their stuff actually. So yeah, Inkhorn is a brewery I've been wanting to feature for a good little while. But yeah, I have to say, the beer looks nice. So first things first, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that the beer has poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. That's going to fade away to be a very thin foamy layer, of course, and you're going to get just a nice little bit of ring around the edge of the glass there. Colour wise, or well, bubble wise, I would say there's some medium sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid, some fluffier things as you go further up the head. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, this is a lovely kind of bright sort of mango juice colour. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices in terms of their appearance, because that's, you know, it's just what it reminds me of. But in terms of the level of haze in this beer, it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of New Englands that I've come across. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use, that goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that with IPAs. Unless it's a fruit IPA or something like that. But the level of haze in these beers too depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery and even beer to beer. So there's not really any kind of written rule about it. But yeah, this one, certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of 8% New England hazies that I've seen. This is actually one of the clearer ones, I would say. But not too much in the way of visible carbonation. A few little bubbles going up toward the top or the surface of the beer there. But yeah, overall it does look pretty nice, this one, and kind of what you would expect from a New England hazy. But I would also potentially argue that it looks a wee bit more like a kind of American IPA. But let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it has in store for us. I'm very, very curious about this. Oh yeah, that smells pretty nice actually. Yeah, kind of everything you'd expect from a sort of Nelson Sauvin Citra hot hazy IPA. I will say as well, you can tell this beer is not in its absolute freshest condition, but we'll come to that in a wee second. But it still smells pretty damn good actually. And it gives you everything you'd expect of a New England IPA. It gives you the bit of breadiness, the creaminess, the fruitiness, and the soft kind of hop character. So as I've said on the channel many times before, there are 6 elements for me to look at when it comes to New England IPAs. You've got your kind of farmhousey yeasty character and your ryling and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American brewed IPAs, I've found. But you've got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. The first impression that I get of this one is that this beer is quite well balanced between the oaty side of things and the kind of the barley malt, if you like. So yeah, the way that this one goes together aroma wise is pretty nice actually. So let's just kind of break it down and describe the aroma for you a wee bit more in depth before we taste the beer. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust in there. Little touch of woodiness, a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker as well, for sure. And then you've also got just a little bit of like sweet wholemeal brown bread in there. I'm trying to remember what were the malts in this one. I think it was with torrefied wheat, oats, and Pilsner. Yeah, so it just says wheat extra Pilsner and flaked oats. That was what I got on the Untappd page from this one. And a little bit of lactose as well, so it should be quite creamy. But yeah, let's get rid of that now. I'm just curious. So yeah, the aroma of this one in that sense is really quite interesting, because the more that I smell of it, the more I get the kind of oaty notes out of the beer, and it has a little touch of that kind of Skittle-like aroma that you can sometimes get from these beers. That must be due to one of the use of one of those sugars. But yeah, as I say, you get that fresh white bready bread crust, you get a little bit of brown bread, you get quite a lot of white bread out of this one. You can smell a little touch of the kind of wheaty bitiness in the back of your nose as well. But yeah, lovely kind of smooth, oaty characteristics coming out of the beer as well. Now, one of the things to bear in mind with New England IPAs is that the oaty character can very often be an indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. Essentially, the creamier the oats smell, essentially the creamier the oats smell, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older the beer is. That's just something I've kind of picked up with experience. But yeah, you can smell a nice little bit of oaty creaminess out of this one, and you can smell a wee bit of the presence of the lactose. And I think when you put lactose with the WLP 66 yeast, that's when you get some of these kind of sort of skittly type notes that I'm talking about. Those sort of candied, fruity sort of things are quite interesting. So yeah, there is a little bit of a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this one too. But yeah, definitely getting a wee bit of that sort of Skittles-like aroma coming out of the beer, which is quite interesting. You're always going to get a wee bit of sweetness out of the beer when it comes to a New England and it being 8%. But yeah, you can smell a little bit of dryness out of the oats, but also a wee bit of sweetness too. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I think we should focus on the hoppy side of things with this beer then. So in terms of the green component, there's a little touch of earthiness in there, but not too much. You've got a nice big, quite zesty floral character to the beer as well though. You get a bit of grassiness, bit of floral character, and one of the things I would say about this beer is that it really shows it really shows you what you should get from a New England IPA in that sense. You've just got a lovely kind of wet but slightly oily and still quite zesty green component. So when it comes to making IPAs, you have three different types of hoppings that you could do. You can do early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, and it'll also give you a very deep, dank aroma. You've got late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, which will give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. That will translate to a very bright, kind of zesty green component like you're seeing in here. And then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, gives you all flavour and aroma, and it gives you similar characteristics to late addition hopping. West Coast IPAs use all three types of hopping, which is why they're a bit deeper and danker, and that dominates. Early addition hopping always dominates in terms of flavour and aroma over it, late and dry hopping. But yeah, New England IPAs rely on late and dry hopping, and you can really smell that in this beer with that big bright green component. So yeah, good little bit of floral character, nice kind of bright zesty grassiness. It's kind of what you want from the style, to be honest with you. But yeah, in terms of the fruity side of this beer, if you know these hops, it's pretty much what you would expect, and the Motueka and the Nelson Sauvin are very apparent in this one. So yeah, for me, I would say the Motueka almost comes across as kind of dominating this beer a little bit, but the Nelson Sauvin is certainly there too. So you absolutely get that kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type aroma out of the beer, which I really do quite enjoy. And you've also got a good little bit of like a juicy, I do get a little bit of the kind of stronger passion fruity, grapefruity thing that Citra can quite often show you. But yeah, it's got quite a lot of juicy mango, so it's like the Nelson Sauvin is sitting kind of underneath, the citrus being a little bit more out there, but the Motueka and that big juicy limey character is also kind of jumping out of the glass at you a little bit. So that's definitely quite interesting with this particular beer. But I really like it. I do really like how this one goes together, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. Aroma wise, it's very, very nice. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in, but I think we are about due to taste this one now. So yeah, this is the Niwa no Tori, the Garden Bird, a collaboration between Inkhorn Brewing in Toshima in Tokyo and Ise Kadoya from Ise in Miya here in Kansai. 8% New England double IPA. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai. Ooh, that's nice. Yeah. On first impression, Yeah, this is definitely one of the softer and more juicy New England IPAs that you're going to come across. Yeah, I really do like how that pieces together. This one gets it does get a thumbs up from me. As I kind of suspected from the appearance of this one, it does go about things in a bit of a different way than the other New Englands I've had in recent times, and it is nice to get stuff that just shows you something different, and this definitely does that. So, where do we start with this then? This is good. I'm going to say if this is the kind of quality you're getting from all of Inkhorn's beers, then we need to look at a few more to say the least. But yeah, so middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a wee touch of woodiness, and you can feel that above the bread crust there's just a layer of that kind of drier Jacob's cream cracker coming out of it. Yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice, and you do get a wee bit more dryness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, above all of that, you do start to get the bready notes out of the beer, so you can feel there's a sort of layer of like an almost kind of sweeter brown bready character just coming out of the beer, which I think is really nice. So yeah, you've got the bread crusty layer, the sweeter brown bready layer, and then the white bready notes coming out of the beer. And then yeah, you have, so you can feel the barley malt white bread, then you start to get the oats and the wheat. So the wheaty layer has a little bit more density to it, and the thing that's interesting about the wheat is that it does give you a wee bit more sort of bitiness into the aftertaste, which is interesting. So yeah, you can feel that more dense white bready wheaty layer, then you've got the kind of oaty creaminess there. And like I said, this beer's not in its freshest condition, I think. It is fairly fresh. I think it's maybe about 2 months old, something like that. 6 weeks, 2 months old, something like that. But yeah, you can feel down the middle line of your tongue, you get a nice, more kind of creamy, oaty character. But as you move out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, you're absolutely getting some of the kind of drier elements of the oats sort of showing their head there. So that's quite interesting with this particular beer. So yeah, I do quite like how that pieces together. It's quite interesting. But what you'll notice is that on top of that oaty layer, and this is probably coming from a mix of the maltose and the lactose. The interesting thing about this beer is I don't get the kind of creaminess from the lactose all that much, but you certainly get a wee bit within that oaty layer that the beer has. You do get a little bit of this kind of Skittle type flavour coming out of it. I think Skittles are everywhere across the world, to be honest with you, so most people that watch this video will know what I mean when I say Skittle flavour. But the other thing is that in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little circle there where the boozy character of the beer shows its head. So in the dead centre of your palate, you have a lovely kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, and you do also have a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of the beer. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really nice. But definitely, when I think about New England hazy IPAs, this one, in a lot of ways, it does come across as more of an American IPA. You know, one of these ones that straddles the line between being West Coast and New England, but definitely more New Englandy leaning. This one, but yeah, that's your middle. That's the middle third of your palate in this beer, quite nicely summarised. So yeah, let's move on to the back third of your palate. And as I say, generally with your palate, sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry flavours will come out further back. But on the between the middle and back third of your palate. You'll get similar flavours on the back third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, on the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you've got a lovely kind of brown bready sort of thing, a little bit of white bread kind of sitting above that. And as I say, that kind of forms the middle, the kind of middle layer of your palate, or that forms the border region, I should say. And when you go onto the back third of your palate, you're still getting that same bread crusty character. It's just a little bit drier and more toasty. Then above that, you've got the brown bready layer, which is a little bit lighter and more airy, and that just kind of builds up. And then you've got the white bready layer again, which is a little bit lighter and more airy, and just that little bit drier. And you can feel some of the wheaty parts of the middle third of your palate just creeping over into that back third of your tongue, and that's where you really start to get a bit of bitiness. You get a little bit of that wheaty bitiness out of the beer, which is kind of interesting. And above everything else, you get the yeasty components coming out of the beer. So let's just focus on that yeasty side of the beer for a minute. That really is good. So yeah, with the yeasty side of things, you get that really dense, you get this really dense, sweet, kind of brown bready character. So yeah, sweet, dense, brown bready character. In the middle, it's like that dense doughy yeast, and a white bready character around it, and just a little bit of honeycomb. I always get a wee bit of honeycomb on the back third of the palate for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but yeah, the yeasty character, as I say, sits above everything else on that back third of the palate, and you can feel that the flavour on the back third of your palate is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more, and I really do like how that pieces together in this one. So yeah, I think we've said everything we need to about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness coming out of the beer. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of herbal quality, and as you push toward the front corners of your palate, it's a little bit more floral and aromatic, but it's got quite a bit of wetness to it, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, you do get a nice green component out of this one, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's a bit lighter and a bit more grassy, and it does make me wonder if they're using a little bit of incognito or cryo oil or something like that in this one, just because of the wetness of the green component. And that does, yeah, it does work really quite nicely. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. On the front third of your palate then, let's focus on the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a wee bit of that bready build up. Brown bread in the base, white bread in the top. And the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of, you do have a nice little bit of brown bready sort of thing coming out, so you get that little bit of brown bready bread crust, the sweeter brown bread on top, and the white bread, a little bit of the oaty smoothness coming out there too. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And I will say about the fruity side of this beer, it's nothing surprising if you know these hops. So for me, at the very back of that front third of your palate, you are getting a wee bit of the stronger, very slightly grapefruity notes that you can expect of Citra. There's a bit of a stronger passion fruit in there as well, but as you move further forward, the Citra kind of mellows out and gives you the juicier mango side of things. You get a wee bit of like papaya and pineapple as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But then the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the Nelson Sauvin and the Motueka. So I think underneath you're getting the oily gooseberry. Yeah, you're getting a wee bit of the oily gooseberry. Oily gooseberry, sort of, white green grapey notes of the Nelson Sauvin, and then above that you're getting the kind of more juicy, limey characteristics of the Motueka. So say compared to Equinaut, Motueka is always a little bit more juicy. Equinaut is a little bit more kind of zesty and punchy in a sense. So yeah, always things to think about with these different hops. But overall, this is a really very, very nice beer, this one, and it certainly makes me very curious to try a few different styles from Inkhorn. So we need to see about making that happen. And you know, Ise Kadoya, these guys are always very, very solid. So yeah, it's good stuff, this one. It's definitely one of the kind of wetter and lighter New Englands that I've had in recent times, especially when you consider that it's 8%. But I like it. That's the main thing. The question should always be, do you like the beer in this one? Yeah, I do. I have enjoyed this one. But I think at this point we can move on and round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, for me, like I said, it's a very clean and quite light New England double IPA. I think we can say that this beer is, yeah, it's probably mid-bodied. It's right in the middle of the spectrum. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. The beer has a mix of oiliness and creaminess to it, but it also feels very wet and very clean. I think in terms of IBUs, the malt base in this one has a wee bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, and a little bit of creaminess and sweetness on top. You do get that little bit of kind of Skittle candy note that I was talking about as well. The IBU count in this beer is like 30 or 40, which is normal. So yeah, 30 to 40 IBUs. And then the fruity side of the beer is quite oily and quite juicy. So I think the way that pieces together, I think is really quite nice. It's the fruity side of this one. It's got a mix of tropical note there, but I do think the Nelson Sauvin and the Motueka, the more oily and citrusy side of the fruity character in the beer, is what shines through in this one, and that gets a big thumbs up from me. But yeah, really, really nice beer, this one. New England kind of straddling the border of what we would call an American IPA, but I really do like this one a lot. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to try. So yeah, this was the Niwa no Tori, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, with Citra, Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, from Inkhorn Brewing in Toshima in Tokyo, in collaboration with Ise Kadoya from Ise in Mie Prefecture in Kansai. Really nice beer, great introduction to Inkhorn Brewing, and another very solid involvement from Ise Kadoya as well. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Inkhorn and from Ise Kadoya, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, Kampai, and I will see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.